Hello, everyone. It's April 15th, 2021, and you're listening to the Fights We Love podcast. I'm your host, Alex O, and today we're going to be doing a film study on Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier. This is in preparation for this weekend's fight card where Whittaker will face Kevin Gastelum, and we'll be seeing what we can learn about Whittaker from his most recent fight and see what may play a factor in this weekend's match. This episode is best enjoyed by watching the fight on your end while listening. Personally, I'm going to be using UFC Fight Pass to watch on my end, but this fight is actually on YouTube this week. It's one of the free UFC fights that they're using to promote the upcoming matchups. So if you don't have Fight Pass, go ahead and just search on YouTube UFC Free Fights Robert Whittaker, and that should be the first result that comes up. And I believe they'll keep that uploaded until the fight actually happens. If you're unable to watch the fight on your end at all, don't worry about it. I'll still be describing the action and provide commentary on the details that stick out to me. The way this will work, I will call out when I'm starting the fight on my end so that you can start watching at the same time. We will not be watching straight through from beginning to end. I'm going to be calling out timestamps, and I'm going to let you know when I pause, when I reverse, and when I slow down parts of the fight so that we can spend some extra time on the good parts and really dig into the details. So you might hear a few key presses and a few clicks here and there, but I'll try to keep it quiet as well. Also, don't worry about being exactly on time with me. I'll let you know when I play and pause so that you can know which parts to play back and the general area of time that we're in the round. As far as controls go, if you're using Fight Pass or YouTube, it's pretty much the exact same controls. So you only really need to worry about a few things. You have the space bar for pause and play, or it's the K key on your keyboard for YouTube, M to mute the commentary, and then the left and right arrow keys that will fast forward or rewind in 5-second increments. We will also be adjusting the playback rate time to time. So if you look in the bottom right corner of your video player, you'll see a gear icon. This is in both Fight Pass and YouTube, and you can select that gear icon to pull up an option with the playback rate. And I'll be using the 0.5x and the 2.25x playback speeds intermittently throughout the episode. So these controls, they should actually be standard with other video players as well. I've used VLC Media Player for fights that I don't watch on the internet, so I'm able to do the same things. Now let's get on to the fight itself. So quick overview before we get started. This was Robert's second fight since losing the middleweight belt in a knockout loss to Israel Adesanya, and he came up against Jared Cannonier. Jared was on a 3-fight win streak with all 3 wins being KOs. He was looking poised to become the next number 1 contender and earn a title shot off of this. So very dangerous fight for both men. And this was a clear number 1 contender fight. Rob as the number 1 and Cannonier coming in ring number 2. Now, the reason I picked this fight to study is because you could really see Rob's level of striking on full display. I mean, he effectively picks apart a very dangerous fighter. And so we're going to be looking specifically at his jab, how he used it to lead exchanges and interrupt combinations, his footwork, how he controlled the striking distance and the push-pull of the fight, and his head kick and how he used his hands to set up his head kick. So those are the key things that we'll be looking out for today. And now let's pull up the fight and get going. So I've got the fight pulled up now past the fighter introductions, and it's got Anders Olsen on the screen. He's walking out, and then it switches right over to Red De La Cruz. She's showing the round 1 card, and then we're going to get going. Fighters come out, touch gloves. Whittaker in an orthodox stance and Cannonier in southpaw, and play that back right off the bat at 4:55. You see Jared throws a lead leg low kick, and Robert steps in with a jab, and this is going to be a big factor in this fight. I'm just playing this over and over again, and try to pause it actually right when that kick makes contact. So you see Jared, he throws that kick right as Rob steps in. And like I was saying, this is going to be a big factor in the fight because Rob really wants to lead off exchanges with his jabs. And when you have somebody who's going to be jabbing a lot, and the way Rob is jabbing is he's darting in and leaning heavy on his front leg, you want to counter with a low kick. A calf kick is great. Low kicks are great anyways, just because that weight is heavy on the lead leg. So let's go ahead and keep going from here. I'm going to press play from 455, and we'll see how the fight goes on and how Cannonier is able to take advantage of that or not. And I'm going to hit play now. So you also see Whittaker bouncing around in his stance, right? I like the way he keeps bouncing and he's feinting, and you see him use that jab step to feint a little bit, right? That's just going to pair really nicely with his actual jab. And now when we get to 435, I'm going to pause right here. So what I'm looking at right now is I'm watching Robert's legs, and if you're paused at 435, you can actually see he's leaning heavy on that lead leg. And so when you approach a fighter like Rob, you really want to be paying attention to his stance, because that's where you're going to find your openings. Now, he's showing already that he's quick, he's sharp, he's bouncing, he's mobile, and he's showing off a sharp jab. So you just want to consider what kind of openings that leaves. Now let's go ahead and press play from about 435. You see he's going to take a little step to the right, change the angle, jab as Cannonier comes in. Tries that lead leg low kick. Tries the lead leg low kick again, and play this back here. Now, Cannonier, he just sits down on the low kick and throws his own back, and he throws it much harder. Trips Rob here. And I mean, just look at Cannonier here too. I mean, he looks very sharp. He looks dangerous. Beautiful technique on his own low kick. I'm going to watch that a few more times. And you know, in this first minute, I'm thinking Rob looks good, but Jared looks dangerous. So how does this play a factor later on, right? It's just well timed. Good timing. All right. Now let's go ahead. I'm letting it play from 4:15 now. You see Cannonier, he gets up. And then he's going to switch to southpaw stance. Once he switches to southpaw stance, we see here, Robert's going to lead with a right high kick. Now let's pause here. This is a kick that breaks Jared's arm. So I'm going to move it back a little bit to about 408. And let's turn the sound on for a second. Just unmute that and listen to the sound that happens when he lands that kick. Bam. Oof. One more time. Oh, God. Very distinctive snap that happens as he goes to block it. Now, if you go back and play it one more time, I'd like you to try and pause right when the kick makes contact. You can turn the sound off now, by the way. Now, when you pause it, and if you pause right about 4:04, that's where you can see the kick make contact. Now, when you look at the way the kick lands on the forearms, now you see Jared, he catches the kick on both of his forearms. But the problem is that his arms are extended out rather than tight to his body. So when the kick lands, he doesn't have his body there to help absorb some of the impact. He instead takes that impact on his arms only. And when you compare the leg to the forearm, the shin to the bone in the forearm, well, there's a noticeable difference there, right? So in this case, Jared would have actually wanted his left hand tight to his body up by his chin and his right arm crossed in front of his left arm to help catch the kick and absorb some of the impact. Now, that being said, Whittaker just kicks awfully hard. It's possible to still break your arms in that position, but it does help mitigate the damage rather than having both arms extended out like this. So this actually just completely changes the course of the fight from here on out. But we're also going to be looking at Jared throws a few high kicks later on, and we're going to compare that to how Robert blocks the high kicks as well. So I'm going to go ahead, play this back to about 409. We're going to watch that kick land one more time, and then we'll let it go from there. So Robert throws a kick. There it goes. And you can see right about 355, Jared kind of shakes his hand out, switches to orthodox here. I like the way he shifts forward as well. And then he switches back to southpaw. Once he switches back to southpaw, we see Whittaker leads with another right high kick. Go ahead and play that back one more time. And he leads with that high kick. I'm going to pause here. Notice here, right when Jared switches to southpaw, that's when Robert goes back to the head kick. He's waiting for him to move into the southpaw stance. So I want you to keep note of that for later. And you can actually see when the kick lands here. Actually, let's play it back one more time. This takes me back to 345. And I'm gonna put this down to 0.5 speed and play. Now you can see when the kick lands, Cannonier's arms are still a little bit out in front of him. And the kick knocks his guard around. So take note of when Robert leads with his right high kick. That's twice now he's done it. Both times were right after Jared switches into southpaw. So I'm going to go ahead, put this back into normal speed. I'm going to play it back to about 347. I'm going to hit play now, and we'll just let it go through from here. Boom, kick lands. And then Robert's going to step in with another jab. Jab just looks really nice tonight. And then let's play this part right back here at 335. Robert leads with a straight left hand into a high kick. Play that back a couple times, and I want to see what you can notice here. So what are we looking at today, right? We're looking at Robert's feet. So play it back. You see him lead with the straight right, shift his right foot forward into a southpaw stance, then go back to the left high kick. And what do Jared's feet tell us? Well, he's standing in southpaw stance, right? So if you go back, play that back, and I'm going to move that down to about 0.5 speed. Not about, just 2.5 speed. And we see Robert shifting his right foot forward as he throws a straight right. Jared gets out of the way. Now, this kick misses, right? And I'm going to pause right there at 332 and switch that back to normal speed. So the kick misses. But what we're really paying attention to is what Robert's doing with his feet and what he's doing to set up his high kicks. He's not going back to the same setup over and over again. He's waiting on Jared to show the southpaw stance, and then he's trying different ways to get into it. And these are the things you have to be careful with when it comes to Robert Whittaker. Outside of him leading with these kicks, he has different setups for them. So you constantly have to be on your toes. You can't just stand in front of him. He's going to find different ways to land, and he's already landed 2 hard kicks already. So how is he going to continue expanding on them, right? So let's go ahead and play from 332 and go. We're going to watch right up to this part right here to 325. You see Cannonier lands 1 low kick and he lands a second one. And let's pause right here and play that back to 328. And I want to bring this back down to 0.5 speed right at 325 and watch Cannonier land 1 and then watch how hard the second one lands. Boom. Right there. And so we're seeing that Robert likes to enter his exchanges kind of the same way. He gets heavy on the lead leg, he feints his jab, then he darts forward with the jab or straight to get you respecting his feints. This plays well into the low kick, and we're going to talk about this a few times, right? It plays well into the low kick, and what's important here is timing when to throw that low kick. So you notice in this case, Whittaker's weight is on his lead leg, and he can't effectively pull it back in time to defend. And when Cannonier follows up immediately, Robert takes the first low kick, he steps back, then he steps back into range. And as he's getting prepared to feint or jab or do it again, Cannonier lands another one. And man, he lands hard on the second one, right? So it's really one of the nicer lead low kicks I've seen lately. I love the technique that he throws it with. And that's going to be important here to just keep landing and keep chewing up that lead leg and try to get Robert to stray away from his jab, stray away from the game plan. And so if you start countering what he wants to do, he might open himself up trying new things later. So, but it's all about timing that lead leg. The jab will come, but the weight on the lead leg comes first. So go ahead, let's move this back again. And I'm at about 327. And let's just, I'm still in 0.5 speed. So 326, moving it back to normal speed. I'm going to hit play and go. He just lands hard, and now it's starting to take effect, right? And Robert starts moving back and away, 3:15, we see Jared throw that jumping switch kick. We could play that back a couple times, actually. So let's look at how Robert counters here. So Jared, he jumps in with the switch kick, and Robert, instead of blocking, actually moves forward and smothers it, and he lands a lead left hook as Jared is jumping in with it, right? So I like what Jared's going for. Play it back a couple more times. I like what he's going for, but it's just a really nice counter by Rob. And, this thing is all moves and counter moves, right? Really, really good display of awareness by Whittaker here. And Jared, for his setup, he's switching off the leg he's been landing the low kick with. So the setup was there. I think it's just a better counter by Robert. So let's play it back one more time, and I'm going to let it play from 3:15 and forward, and here we go. So Robert's keeping the jab busy. And Robert's kind of controlling the pace of the fight too. And Jared lands a nice low kick at 3 minutes. We're going to get down to 2:53 and see Jared switches back to southpaw. What do we see? Play it back. It's immediate, right? Jared goes to a neutral stance, bounces around, switches into southpaw, and right away, Robert goes for a high kick. And let's pause right here at 2:52. And I'm going to slow that down to 0.5. Move it back 5 seconds, and let's play it from here. And so this is what, the fourth time that Robert leads with a high kick right after Jared switches to southpaw. And watch Robert's hands as he throws the kick here. He reaches out with both hands to obscure Jared's vision, and he throws the kick behind it. So the hands aren't really there to do anything. He doesn't need to land damage with it. He needs to distract. He needs to cover your vision so that you can't really see the kick coming. Now, it barely misses Jared, and it grazes. I think it grazes the top of his head, but keep note of this same setup for later. And now I'm going to switch it back to normal speed. I'm going to play it back at 2:57. I'm going to hit play, and we'll just watch it go through here. Boom. So close. Inches here, right? And at a 2:48. Wow. Beautiful straight right hand by Robert. Let's play that back too. And I want to note the feet placement here. So pause at 2:48 right when the punch lands if you can. So we're looking at the feet placement here. Now you can notice Jared's in southpaw. He tries to lead in with a jab. Robert slips outside of the jab and lands the straight right. And you're going to notice that the angle here, Robert's got a significant angle advantage, and his left leg, it's outside of Jared's right leg. So in a southpaw orthodox matchup, the fight is always the lead hands and the lead legs. So Robert has won this exchange by getting outside of Jared's lead hand. So it's almost in a T position. If you look at the lines that their feet are making, it's kind of an awkward T. But that's something you want to be looking out for in a southpaw orthodox matchup. You want to see almost this T position when somebody lands a strike, and that shows the footwork advantage there. So let's go ahead. Let's move this back up to normal speed. Nope, I'm already on normal speed. What am I doing? I'm going to move it back to 2:53, and let's just let it play through from there. So Robert goes with a nice head kick, then he steps in. Boom. Hard right hand. And right here at 2:41, we're going to play this back now. What do we see? Jared's in southpaw. And this is my favorite setup that Robert has for the head kick. He goes, and I'm going to pause at 2:40 right here. So what do we see? We see Robert, he steps in with a heavy kick, but he uses a 1-2 to go right into the head kick, and he throws the right hand and immediately follows with the right kick afterwards. So if you go back and play it, I'm going to go back to 2:45. I'm going to put that into 0.5 speed and just hit play here. And so I'm looking at the timing on the head kick after he throws the right hand. So you see he steps in and pause as he's throwing the right hand. You'll notice he's already thrown the head kick before he's even started retracting the right hand. So the timing of that kick is beautiful. And if you can really look at, this freeze frame right here just kind of shows you everything, right? He's already pulling the right hand, or he's already throwing the head kick as he's pulling back. Jared is covered up. He's going to catch the kick on both forearms. And, this time the guard is, tighter to his body. But again, you still want that lead hand crossed in front to kind of use your palm and try to catch that kick, right? And he's ducking into the kick because he's trying to slip the right hand. So this is one of Robert's better setups that he has for the high kick. Actually, he used this exact same combo to land a head kick against Jacare Souza before finishing him. You also see him do it against Derek Brunson. So it's one of his go-tos. It's his bread and butter, and he lands incredibly effectively with that head kick. And it's all about timing. That if you're thinking about the jab and you're thinking about the 1-2 and you just start trying to slip out, that puts you right into the path of the head kick. So I'm going to play that through. Boom. Lands hard. Jared gets out of the way. I'm going to switch that back to normal speed and bump that back to about 245. And then let's just go ahead and let it play through from here. Play. It's so quick, too. So quick. And so Rob has just made you respect his hands, and now he's making you think about the kick after the hands. And he's established his game, and it's a very dangerous position to find yourself in. I'm at about 215 now, and they're just trading back and forth, feeling each other out still. And, you don't really see Jared throwing that left hand, right? He's kind of playing with his hand, and he just can't really get anything going with it, and we're going to be paying attention to that later. We know now that the hand is broken, but I think at the time you're watching the fight, you're kind of wondering why he's standing southpaw and not really landing any power shots with it. So we're getting up to about 143, and good jab. Just play that back a couple times. And this time he's actually stepped inside of Jared's lead foot. And he's just firing straight down the center line. So even though he's inside the lead leg, that's fine. He's got the jab lined up with Jared's chin. And he's on the center line here. I'm going to play that back from 145 and just let it go from there. You really can't overstate how sharp Robert's jab looked in this fight, huh? This one's nice. Jared's starting to circle. And now he switches to orthodox, and Rob steps in with a jab. Let's play this back a few times right here. Now, it's at this point in the fight, that's where I'm really starting to notice that the footwork is really starting to work for Rob now. You can see he's hopping up and down. He's sliding back little by little and then darting in with these jabs. So it's that motion of he's standing in range, then he pulls back a little bit. And then as Jared steps forward to follow him, he darts in with his jab. So that's, again, that push-pull effect that you really want to pay attention to when you're considering the distance of a fight. And it's hard. It's important to control that. Sorry, it's not hard. It's important to control that. And I'm going to go ahead and just pause at 130 here. I've played it back a few times and just watched that over and over again. But I'm pausing here because it's important to control the push-pull of the fight, because when you control the push-pull of a fight, you control the distance of the fight. If you're controlling the distance of the fight, you're having exchanges on your terms. And I mentioned this. Dominic Cruz talks about this all the time. And Dominic Cruz is a master of distance. So that's one of the things he's looking to do in a fight. And distance is everything when it comes to striking, right? So let's go ahead and play it from 130 here. And again, distance starts with your feet, right? So footwork is a huge key here. And his jab works because his feet are doing the work for him. You can always tell so much about a fight just by looking at a fighter's feet. And it helps to play it back a few times. Like we're able to do beautiful jab by Rob right there, right at 111. They're just going to close out this round. Jared is still going for that low kick, and I like to see that he's staying active with it. A few exchanges here, and about 55. I like Robert's starting to double jab now, and he's trying to keep his own low kicks going too, right? Rob is also trying to attack the lead leg of Jared. Robert leading with the straight right. And keep noticing these little like short steps that Robert is taking backwards. He's not running backwards from exchanges, right? Little short steps. There you go. Right at 18 seconds, we see Robert go for another head kick, and Jared was standing in southpaw stance. So closing out the round with the thing that kind of got him the round, right? I'm going to let this play out all the way through. Just beautiful recognition of the stance switches. They finish the round. There you go. So, some closing thoughts. What are we thinking? I'm going to go ahead and pause here right before we get to the corners. Now, two things worked really nicely for Rob so far. The jab and the right high kick. So he's doing a really good job, just to recap, doing a really good job moving backwards and pulling Jared into range rather than just standing in front of him and trading. He's setting up the right kick nicely whenever Jared steps into southpaw. Jared was still able to land some hard low kicks as well. So especially when he's able to time them with Rob's jab. And in his corner, they have to be trying to tell him new ways to counter the jab. It's not just like wait on it and try to time it every single time. You have to come up with different counters as well, right? So let's go ahead and we're going to unmute and listen to Rob's corner here. Set up your work. Good corner advice, actually. All right, let's go back to mute as they play these highlights. So we'll just let the highlights keep going. But I like what his corner said here, right? He says, don't sit around and admire work. Get out and reset. Start again. So land, keep moving after you land. And he's moving his head when you punch. So think about the kick after the punch. Now, Rob's already doing that pretty effectively, but he's reminding his fighter. And that's what you want to see. You want to see good technical advice from your coaches in the corner. You don't want to just see things like, hey, keep moving your head, right? He's telling him what to do and when to do it. Now, round 2 is starting. Cannonier comes out and southpaw. Rob opens with a 1-2. And now Jared tries with a low kick, play that back. Leads with a low kick, and Rob lands the jab and moves and counter moves here, right? Can Rob land the jab before the kick lands, or can Jared land the kick before the jab lands? It's an interesting battle that we're seeing going on with the low kick and the jab here. To about 416. Now we're seeing Jared. He's starting to slip inside Rob's jab, right? He was starting that towards the end of round 1, but he's doing it more now. And there's that right high kick again. Jared got away with that, but the lead guard was out of position. Now right here at 4 minutes, go ahead and play that back. Rob goes 1-2, slips inside. Slip inside by Jared, right? He's moving his head and he's ducking his head pretty low as that 1-2 comes in. So I'm going to play it back and let's let that roll forward from about 4 minutes. Go. Now, right up here, I'm going to pause right at 3:53. Now, we're going to pause and play this back a couple times. And what I'd like to pay attention to here is Jared is now leading with left high kick, and try to pause as the kick is coming in and take note of where Rob's hands are here as the high kick comes in. So you see Rob puts his hand up and he's crossing his lead hand over the kick. And so it's a little bit obscured because of where Jared's hand is when the kick comes in, but you can see Rob's head kick technique as he blocking technique, and I just want to draw a comparison here to the way the way Jared was blocking the head kick. So this way, the kick just bounces off of Rob, doesn't do a ton of damage here, and it's hard to see again, but like Rob's lead hand, it plays a factor here in the way he's able to catch that kick on his guard properly. So let's go back to about 355 and let's just let it play from there forward. And go. So there's that left head kick. And nice shift forward here as Jared tries the overhand right. Now right about 335, you see Jared lands the lead leg low kick again. That one lands hard. And now 327, I want to take note of Rob's feet here. Look what he's doing and play that back a couple times. You see that Rob is taking these little hop steps back again. He's continuing to pull Jared into range. So it's kind of the same process here, right? He moves back, plants, and then tries to land as Jared steps forward. Rinse and repeat. And if you think about Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist, right? This is a good example of that principle here. Rob is just waiting for these little moments to explode forward and intercept Jared as he moves in. So I'm going back, and then I'm going to play it back one more time, starting from 330, and it's going down. He's just moving back, jabs in, and we'll let it play from there. I just love the work Rob's doing, and slips in, lands his own right hand. You know, Jared's spent most of this round in southpaw now. He's not switching back and forth nearly as much. He's still going to that lead leg low kick, but it doesn't really seem like he's been able to get a solid read on Rob's jab and counter effectively. And I think it's because of the way that Robert is using footwork. It's hard to slip properly and it's hard to defend properly when you're walking forward. So Robert is taking advantage of the feet here. So I'm at about 240. Jared's still going to that lead low kick, but every time he walks forward, he's having to defend on that jab. And so let's keep going here. We're going to get down to about 219. Notice again, Rob's just sliding back, and boom, lands a hard jab. Play that back. Play that back from about 220, and I really want to emphasize the footwork on this one and slow it down to 0.5 speed here. Play it just from 220. Sliding back, slides back, and he's just bouncing backwards, and then Jared moves forward. I'm going to play that back 220 again. So I played it back, and now I'm watching Jared, and watch Jared's feet as he's like kind of following in, and he's stepping as Robert is jabbing, and that's the problem here. That's the difference in being able to defend and eating that jab. His feet are not set, so he can't really slip outside the way he wants to. He just takes the shot straight down the pipe, and he's even jabbing too, right? So let's go back, bump that back up to normal speed, and play it from 220. And now we can also see the limits of Jared's injured arm now, right? He's not really able to return power shots to get Rob on alert and kind of respect his left hand. It seems that he just can't fully extend his arm to punch without hurting himself, right? Of course, as I say that, he throws the left hand. He's still jabbing with his left hand, but geez, can you imagine? We're going to get down to about 141 here. Not yet, but so all right, now we're at 141 on my end, but you see Rob lands a jab, Jared slips inside and tries to counter with the overhand right. Play that back a couple times. Rob just pulls back, steps in with the jab, lands while Jared looks for the right hand. And one thing I notice here, actually, and I'm still playing this back, but while we're seeing Jared slip inside more this round, we haven't seen Rob go to the head kick. So maybe he's just saving energy for later. It is, he's not seeing that he's been able to like really hurt Jared yet, but he is landing well. So maybe he's just saving energy for later. Maybe he's lulling Jared to sleep also. He's trying to get him just thinking about the jab for a while and how to deal with that. And when you come back to the head kick later, it'll be after Jared's gotten really used to slipping inside. So let's go back to about 145 and we'll just let it play from there through this jab and go. And it's just a way of getting him thinking about something else. And he head kicked head kicked a few times that round, and now he just hasn't thrown it at all in this round. I mean, maybe once or twice, right? And so getting up to about minute 20. And I like where Robert's keeping the fight. He's moving around and he's just keeping the fight kind of in the center of the cage where he's got a lot of space to move forward and backwards, right? So you see Robert ducks into some double unders from here. Now you see Jared, he goes to the jumping switch kick again, and this one, play it back. And again, I want you to call attention to Rob's hand placement as he blocks that kick. And this is a better example because it's not so obscured, but you see the same thing, right? I'm going to pause it right when that kick makes contact. Right hand tight to the body, left hand cross in front of the right forearm, catches that kick, and play that back a couple times. You can just see it's a bit more effective as he catches the kick on his guard, right? I mean, better way of doing it. More effective. It's safer, right? Play it back from 58 seconds. One more time, starting now. And you can bet your butt that Jared kicks hard, right? And this is good right here at 52 seconds. You see Jared, he jabs with the left hand. Now, we talked about how he's limited here. Play this back a few times. But he does jab, draws out Rob's jab, and then throws the low kick after Rob jabs. That's a beautiful way of drawing out Rob's jab and getting him to lean heavy on the kick, on Rob's lead leg so that he can land the kick in. Jared just lands a couple nice kicks here. And actually, if you look back over the judges' scorecards, Jared won this round on 2 of them, and I think it's because of how well he was landing this low kick. So go back, play it back from about 50 seconds, and go. Just landing hard low kicks. Now Rob's throwing out a couple jabs. Jared lands a low kick. And actually, when I saw this round, I actually thought Rob won it. I thought he was just kind of jabbing his way to a win. Lands a really nice 1-2 there. But I could see, I mean, there's damage, really good damage being done by these low kicks, right? We're going to let this round play out from here. Wow, double jabs into a straight right. I love seeing a double jab. Love double jabs. Who doesn't, right? It's good stuff. Round ends. Jared going back to the corner. A little bit less diverse round for Rob, right? But no need to take risks either, considering how well the jab was working. So let's unmute, listen to the corner. Talking about the lead leg. Keep attacking it. It's a little bit hard to hear everything they're saying here. All right, let's go ahead and mute again now. And pause right before this second round starts. So the key things I took away from the corner there, keep attacking the lead leg. Lead leg is all chewed up, he said. And it was a little bit hard to hear, but I was hearing just, they're saying it's just his jab. It's just a jab. So move your head offline. And after you slip off of the jab, you need to return. They're really emphasizing you can't just slip. You have to slip and fire back. Easier said than done, but that's good advice. You don't want to just defend. You want to defend and get your own offense going. So before we go into round 3, now we're thinking about round 2. And like I said, it's a little bit less diverse for Rob, but again, the big factor was his control over distance, and that gave him a distinct advantage in just about every exchange. He didn't really look for the head kick, but he didn't have to either because he was able to still score and avoid real damage. So tough round, but tough round for Jared. I mean, he was still able to land some damaging low kicks. And he's just a hair behind on the timing, and it's getting a little bit harder to keep up with that jab as Rob continues to build up damage. So I'm going to go ahead and play here as we get ready to start round 3. Jared is standing up. They're wiping him off. Great fight. It's a really technical battle we're seeing in terms of moves, counter moves, footwork, things like that. They touch gloves. And right off the bat, Jared in southpaw and Robert jumps in with a 1-2. Get to about 446 here, and we see Rob steps in, lands that jab, and Jared tries to slip, play that back. Just a sharp jab from Rob, huh? Not to mention that it looks just as sharp now as it did in the first. The conditioning that Robert is showing. It's efficiency of movement that I always like to emphasize with certain fighters. And I'm still playing this back, by the way. And you see that Rob, he's staying light on his feet. And if you remember back to his run on The Ultimate Fighter with Kevin Gastelum, he just had a really good gas tank. That their coaches challenge that season was I think a 5K, and he just kind of blew Gastelum out of the water in terms of conditioning. So from 446, we'll go ahead and let it play here. I just want to call attention to how good Robert's jab is and how good his conditioning looks. And it's because he's controlling his energy, he's controlling the distance, and that makes him efficient. So from 446, we'll go ahead and let it play from there and go. That's really I don't know what the right word is, but it's tough to deal with when your opponent has cardio like that in the third round, huh? Get down to about 425, and we're going to play that again. Look at that. Full speed, huh? Look at how quick Robert jumps in with this jab here. He fires right as Jared is stepping in, and it's so difficult to defend when you're caught mid-step. Jared's walking forward, and the jab comes in. And if you're walking forward and the jab's coming forward, then what can you really do? And so I'm going to pause at 425, right when that jab makes contact. And comparatively, Rob is just so light-footed. He's constantly bouncing on his toes. Every time every time Rob lands one of these jabs, you see Jared step back a few steps, and then he has to walk back into range. So Rob doesn't really have to do a lot to reset. He can just land, keep a stance, fire again when Jared steps back into range, right? So I'm going to play from 425 and then play it back to about 430. And I just want to watch this jab again. You see Rob, he's going to land the jab. Jared, look how far back, and then he walks back in, and Rob jabs again, right? So we're going to let this go from 420. Mastery. And what do we see at 420? 414. Play that back. I mean, it's all here. Everything from the first round, right? If you play it back, you see at 416, Jared switches southpaw. 414. Robert goes 1-2 head kick. Boom. Lands right on the forehead, right around the temple. I'm going to play that back a couple times. It's hard to see exactly where it lands, but you see right after. I mean, he lands, Jared's legs go out, and he's stumbling, falls forward, and we're playing it from 4:05 here right now. Robert's trying to finish the fight. Let's pause right here at 4 minutes, right? And I really love seeing in the third round the work that you set up in the first and second round come out. And we said, where was that high kick in the second round? But we saw it a ton in the first round, and now here it is again. And it's the same setup that he used so nicely in the first. And you see Jared, he switches to southpaw, but you also see that he slips inside, as he's gotten used to doing by now. So when he slips inside, his hands are out of position and the kick lands on the forehead. And it hurts him this time. So it's just everything that Rob's been working on up until this point has been building up nicely. And so I'm going to go ahead and play from 4 minutes. You just constantly build on top of techniques in a fight, and then it ends up paying off in the third round or fifth round or things like that. So beautiful work by Robert in this fight. Yeah. Now you see Robert pass into half guard here at about 342. And he has an arm triangle, but there's nowhere to really go for it, right? He's got Jared pressed up against the fence. So he's content just kind of sealing this round for him, having top position for a while. And at 321, I want you to pay attention to Rob's legs too. Look at what he does with his left foot. You see he swims that in. He uses his left foot to try and free up his right foot. He's kind of pushing down on Jared's leg, trying to open up those legs, and he almost passes, but he pushes it into half guard on the right side now. And now Robert passes into full mount here, and he's able to kind of get away with leaning on the fence, and that's the advantage of having your opponent against the fence, right? But he can lean that way without worrying about getting flipped over. And look at this right here. The sequence right here is just incredible out of Jared Cannonier, I think. You could really see the fight in Jared. He just never really stops working. He doesn't accept a bad position. He just keeps moving and keeps moving. And we get to 427. Rob tries to turn this over into a mount. Jared Wall walks back up to his feet. So let's pause right here because I really just want to emphasize, you want to talk about heart in a fight. That's it right there. We talk about heart when we watch these crazy back and forth striking matches. But when we look at this case, you see Jared Cannonier on the bottom position. It's the third round. His arm is busted. He's just been rocked by a head kick. He's dead tired, and he's against the fence with Robert Whittaker in a dominant top position, and he's still working, and he's still getting out. It's really hard to truly put into perspective how difficult it was for Jared to fight through that sequence, because especially in the third round of a fight, to be able to pull yourself out of that position, considering all the other things I mentioned, it's just, that's real hard. That's real fight. And we've seen so many other guys just kind of get into positions like that in late rounds of the fight and accept those positions. And you can't hold that against them. It's a very tiring position, and the fatigue has set in. But when you see a guy like Jared Cannonier just fight through that and get out of that position, it's really admirable. And I can't overstate the heart that Jared Cannonier shows here. And I know we're focusing on Rob here, right? But this is just, this right here kind of shows you what Jared Cannonier is really all about. That's why we're going to see him at the top for a while, I think. That's why you're going to see him come back from this fight very well. It's fighting through adversity. And I just really want to take a moment to appreciate just how badass that was. I mean, and he gets back to his feet. I'm going to go ahead and play from 420 and go. It's crazy. Jared Cannonier, he's absolute badass. I mean, he gets up and now he's able to get into the dominant position against the cage, try to get his own offense going. Not coasting for a second. We're getting to about 150, and they separate back to the center. Jared gets his own high kick going. Rob, right back to work with the jab. And that you could tell that exchange, that grappling exchange, that's tired Rob out a lot too. He was looking pretty fresh before that grappling exchange, huh? And he's trying to get his feet going again. He's trying to hop up and down, but man, the fatigue that sets in after those grappling exchanges, it's a huge deal. 108. Man, Jared's eye is almost completely shut now. Just the work that Rob's done with that jab all night. Jared goes back to this jumping switch kick. That's nice. Play that back, though. Look at the hands. Look at Rob's hands. Boom. That's something to improve upon. Play it back from about 45 seconds. And go. Now watch right here. Jared shifts forward into southpaw. Boom, lands a hard jab. Play that back. Now we've seen him do this a few times where he shifts that, kind of feints the kick, and he shifts his right foot forward into southpaw. And now he actually sets himself up nicely with a footwork advantage. He shifts forward and try to pause as the punch lands. And what do you notice? You see Jared has his lead leg now outside of Rob's lead leg, and that finally gives him the footwork advantage and the angle advantage, and he lands hard. And 36 seconds left in the fight. Let's play it from 36. You see, lands hard, and Rob's legs go out. Right on the chin. Lands hard. That's how on alert you have to be with Jared Cannonier. 30 seconds left in the fight, and he hurts you. Hurts you bad. And then Rob goes in for the takedown, and we're just gonna let them finish it here. But that's why Jared, he has confidence to keep fighting through, and that's why he's able to push through adversity in these difficult situations too. He knows he has the capability to end a fight at any moment too, and he came really close here. Fight ends. Great fight out of both guys. And some closing thoughts. I mean, I really wanted to just focus on Rob this fight and the technique he showed, but by the end of the third round, I found myself just completely nerding out over how good Jared Cannonier is. I mean, I love this fight overall, but great display out of both men. I think grittiness, toughness, real heart out of Cannonier, and just a very beautiful technical battle on the feet won by Robert Whittaker, and the footwork is just lovely. I love it. Heart of a lion for Jared, and Robert. He looks sharp as ever. He looks very good and championship level for sure. It was a simple and effective game plan for Robert Whittaker. He controlled the range. He pulled Jared into his straight shots, and then he landed the head kick off of the shots. I think you can say speed was definitely a factor. Robert's jab was just so quick and so explosive. But you have to respect the timing too, and the ability to control the push-pull of the fight. Like I said, it means you're always striking on your terms, and this will be a really big factor for Rob against Kevin Gastelum this weekend. Gastelum also stands southpaw, so I'll be looking for those setups into the right high kick as well. So it's hard to say exactly how much of a stand-up battle that we will see. Gastelum kind of went heavy wrestling in his last fight against Ian Heinisch, so he's kind of trying to go back to his roots. And if I was in his camp, I'd be saying we want to look to lead grappling exchanges against Whittaker and try to tire Whittaker out, try to reduce some of the explosiveness of those jabs, especially when you take into account how hard the shots and how sharp the shots looked in this fight with Cannonier. So very exciting matchup this weekend. I think both guys, both Gastelum and both Whittaker, I'd be happy to see rematch Adesanya again, whoever wins here. But I do think Robert's just looking in tip-top championship form right now, so I do give him the edge. The fight takes place this Saturday, April 17th in Las Vegas at the UFC Apex facility. Main card starts at 7 p.m. Pacific time and prelims at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So that's, again, Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum. Some other fighters I'll be looking for on the card: Drakkar Klose, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, Luis Pena, or, as you know, Violent Bob Ross, Tracy Cortez. So a lot of fun fighters, some potential contenders on this card. And we'll be back next week, most likely to look at Zhang Weili versus Rose Namajunas for the Women's Strawweight Championship. I know I said last week that I was going to talk about that this week, but I lied. So I couldn't resist talking about Whittaker. So please accept my deepest apologies for my sudden but inevitable betrayal. And I hope you still enjoyed the film study this week and found it productive. So if you want to keep up with me during the week, you can also find me on Twitter at Fights We Love. I'm also on most major platforms now: YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, however you're finding this now. That's how you can keep finding me. And once again, I'm Alex O. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I truly appreciate you tuning in. And I think this is shaping up to be a pretty nice card. So there's a lot of good talent there. So I hope you enjoy the fights this weekend and join me next week and we'll talk about the fights we love. Thank you for listening.